ahead and get started. This will be our final week. Thanks for those of you that have stuck it out. This is probably our most important day as far as I'm going to summarize everything that we've discussed essentially. Go as fast as I can, and hopefully my voice lasts because I've had serious allergy problems the last several days. But everything's going to be sort of summarized. It'll be sort of like how to apply all of the concepts. We sort of built all the blocks. We're going to talk about putting it all together. Father, thank you for this morning. We can discuss this topic, stewardship of the body. I pray that you would help us grow in our faithfulness, and also just use this as a useful time to learn and to discuss. In your name, amen. All right, cool. I did not put these in any particular order. These are not the items in the outline are not in order of importance. They're just in order of how it occurred to my brain as I wrote them out. Because none of them are the most important, but if you want to know what is the most important as far as your health, right, in order: diet, sleep, exercise. There's a whole bunch of other stuff here that's not diet, sleep, exercise. All the things that are not that are equally ranked. They're just all of the other things, okay? If you have diet, sleep, and exercise the way they should be, you can kind of get away with the rest of the things not being optimal. In fact, you can also, make little, right? Nobody's diet's going to be perfect. My diet's not perfect. I had pizza yesterday, which is fine once in a while. However, what I don't recommend you do is, treat any of them as I'll just get the diet and won't screw the rest, right? I don't recommend you do that. I recommend you make the good faith effort on all three of those. If those aren't good enough for you, right, if you're not feeling well, then begin to examine these other things if they were problematic for you to implement. So starting from the top. Now this, by the way, is lifestyle design, right? This is how to apply the principles. I'm not going to rehash everything, but I'll rehash some of it just as a reminder. Reduced EMF exposure at night. It doesn't really matter that much what you're exposed to during the day because the body is used to being bombarded by radiation during the day. We've been bombarded by it ever since, well, probably not Adam and Eve, depending on how you believe the earth was structured at that time, but at least since Noah. We've been bombarded by solar radiation and EMF signaling during the daytime. We're used to it. Humans appear to be created to be exposed to that. Obviously, there's excess, right? If you work in a radio tower or something like that, then there's mitigating factors. However, what we want that's important is at nighttime, you're around as little electromagnetic frequency signaling as possible. This means if you have a cell phone in your bedroom, it's on airplane mode. If you're someone that has to be able to take calls at night because of your job or whatever else, turn the ringer all the way up and put it in a room adjacent. But what we don't want is a cell phone emitting radio frequency signaling, usually, in many people's cases, just a couple feet from your head. Now, that's not because the studies that they've done on 5G and all this stuff, they basically bombard cells in a dish with 5G signaling and conclude, well, it didn't do anything to the cells. Well, no, it doesn't really, not in particular. It's a systemic effect. You conflict with the brain's programming for when is it nighttime signaling, when is it daytime signaling. You have receptors in your brain that receive these frequencies. Also, you end up with an electron imbalance in your body. Sounds woo-woo, but it is true. The social media influencers that are talking about touching grass and all this stuff, they're usually wrong about why you should do it. But getting outside and grounding yourself has merit if you're someone that's exposed to a lot of EMF. If you work in an office around a bunch of wireless devices and other things like that, there's a lot of merit in stepping outside every once in a while. You don't have to get barefoot on the grass. You can actually touch the side of a building. We've all had static electricity and shocked ourselves on metal and things like that. Go step outside, touch a tree, whatever. Walk around, touch your car. But that discharge will actually be useful to your body in restoring some degree of electrical signaling balance. It is actually a real thing. It's just that some people take it too far and are a little too woo-woo about it, but it has merit. If you find yourself working or indoors and you're feeling just be cognizant of this. If you're feeling there's a tension, you probably know what I'm talking about. You sit at your computer and you just kind of get tight. Step outside for a minute. 1 minute, 2 minutes, that's all it takes. You're not just giving yourself a mental break, you're also actually changing the signaling in your body. You're sort of activating a different software path, if you will. Okay. Protected circadian rhythm. Obviously, it's really hard to not have the same bedtime and waking up time weekends versus during the day because our schedules change, some of ours more than others. Do your best at least 5 days a week to go to bed at the same time. If you do that, you'll be pretty good. But it's just as important to go to bed at the same time as it is to wake up at the same time. The body thrives on repetition. We're not like, so a good example is like dogs. Most people in this room, I'm sure, have had dogs or been around dogs. When do dogs sleep? Whenever they want. Like, it might be 5 minutes, it might be 5 hours. They just feel like sleeping, they lie down, and they get good quality sleep. They get a full REM cycle, they're boom, REM cycle, everything. They've studied this. The software in a dog's brain for how they sleep is the polar opposite from our own. They don't need any habit, they don't need anything. They can stay up all night and then sleep during the day, and then the following day they can reverse it, they can do whatever they want. You can't. You're human. The way that we work, the way that we are built is fundamentally different. That's why shift workers, we've all known people that were shift workers, and some of us have done shift work. I did for a time in my life. You're tired all the time. Even though on paper you got your 7 or 8 hours of sleep or whatever. It's because you've messed with that rhythm. It will never be the same. That's why shift workers, on average, live 7 years shorter. It's because of that. Lifting weights 3 to 4 hours weekly, light cardio 1 to 2 hours weekly. Okay. I talked about last week about lifting weights. You don't have to max out. In fact, I'd advise you do not max out all the time because that's kind of dumb, especially the older you get. That's ego lifting. But what I do recommend is a decent volume training program. You don't have to use barbells. You don't have to use dumbbells. You don't have to use machines. If you want to go outside and pick things up and do heavy stuff, that's fine. Yard work doesn't count, however. Chores don't count, okay? Unless you habitually pick up chicken feed bags, they're 200 pounds, it doesn't count. That's good for your general health and well-being, and I'll even give you that some of it could even be cardio, depending on how vigorous it is, and conditioning, but that's not the same, right? What is the same is anything that is heavy, anything that is progressive, and it's really hard to track and be progressive about random objects around your property, but again, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But if you spend a minimum of 3 hours per week doing something structured, just follow a program. Go download a free program, hire someone. You guys will know I do this. I have programs. There's programs all over the internet. Some of them are free. Some of you pay $20 for. If you don't want to if you want to just take the thinking out of it, then do that. The Smiths just got a whole home gym set up for, you guys probably didn't even drop $1,000 on that thing, did you? Yeah. Yeah, and it's been that way for about 7 years. $1,000 will get you a home gym. Barbells, rack, bench, maybe some dumbbells, depending on how well you do on Facebook Marketplace. It was Craigslist 7 years ago when I started. Now it's all Facebook Marketplace. And you don't need much room. 8x8. An 8x8 space. That's all you need. And you can leave this junk outside if you want. It'll rust. But if you don't have an indoor space, you have a concrete pad. I've seen people do it. Or they just put a tarp over the rack and then rope down the corners. It works. Is it optimal for your equipment? No. Is it going to be comfortable all the time? No. But your health and well-being will be a lot better off for it, I can promise you that. Or gym membership. There's no good gyms around here. You got to go all the way to Linden. Some of you live in Linden, so that's fine. Linden has a good gym or two, but there's no good gyms in our little locale. I may be trying to change that someday, but that's a different factor. Light cardio. I don't advise running for adults. Running is for children. Long distance. It is. That sounds trite and silly, but it's true. People that run a lot habitually have bone problems. They have cardiovascular. If you look at sports, like cardiovascular disease occurrence in sports, like the worst outcome among athletes is distance runners. Not sprinters, they're fine. But long distance runners, they have a lot of cardiovascular disease prevalence, I should say. The light cardio, some sprint work is good, get your heart rate up, but at a minimum, you should be walking fast, you should be riding a bike, some treadmill work, whatever works for you. Wear a backpack and hike. Go for a while. And you brought up hiking. Obviously, there's no end of trails to explore around here hiking, or go for a walk in town, but it should be somewhat vigorous. We want it to be somewhat, it shouldn't be just a gentle thing, right? It should be a little bit of a strain. You should be able to talk while you're doing it, but barely. That's what we call low intensity cardio. Usually your heart rate's going to be in like the 130s, something like that. You'd be able to carry on a conversation and, every once in a while you might kind of have to get the breath out, but you could actually say full sentences. Planning ahead for your diet. Obviously diet is diet. And why do I say that? Did people 200 years ago have to worry about their diet very much? No, because they had access to good quality food. Their issue was actually like, how do we get meat? Right? Because we have you can get all the meat you want today. People's challenge was getting enough protein. Actually, ironically, it's still getting enough protein, but it's not due to lack of availability. It's just that people don't, eating all the, shall we say, highly satiating foods that we have around us are not meat. They're not proteins, right? They're carbs and fats. All the processed foods, things like that. So interestingly, humans still struggle to get protein in today that they have always struggled with, but for wildly different reasons. So anyway, don't make dietary decisions when hungry. If you just do that, you'll probably be 80% of the way there. Don't decide what to eat while you're hungry. That's for everyone. It's for when you're on vacation. All right? If you want to do that, do it on vacation. Do it while you're out and about. But don't do it on a day-to-day basis. Just know what you're going to eat next. Have that planned out. You do that, you're going to make far more rational decisions. Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of other stuff here. I talked about specifically structuring macros and having a structured diet plan. I'm going to digress a little bit from that today. That, to me, is training wheels. Okay? Measuring your food. I think I even mentioned when we did that one, do this for a while, get one of those little scales, measure things, use whatever. That's training wheels so that you know what good food, good portions for you look like. I don't deem it generally sustainable for most people to weigh all of their food for life. Do any of you? If you say yes, you're kind of weird. Okay? That's not what most people, and I don't expect that. I'm not pushing for that. The goal is training wheels, weigh your food for a bit, see what the right portion of meat looks like, the right portion of rice looks like, the right portion of salad looks like, those types of things. And then you know what it looks like, you'll do pretty well. I'm not trying to produce a room full of athletes here, right? We're trying to produce a room full of very responsible husbands and wives, mothers, fathers, grandparents, etc. Don't eat until you're full, except for Thanksgiving. You're allowed Thanksgiving. And a couple other days. Fine, I don't care. But this thing of eating until you're full at lunch and dinner, especially that a lot of people get in the habit of, try to find the difference between satisfied and full. There is a difference, I promise. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that means you need this training for a minute. And it's just the habit. Learn when satisfied hits. In my estimation, it's probably around 70% of full. Did you say that's fair? Yeah. 70% or so. Get to the point where you can say, if I walk away from this, I'm not going to have cravings, I'll be fine. Which is probably a lot earlier than you think. A lot earlier. You probably might be surprised what you go to a restaurant, a normal portion, that's full. Think of 70% of that. That's often pretty close. Now that's more for men. For women, it's actually going to be closer to 50%. Like a Chipotle burrito, Usually for a woman, like an appropriate lunch will be like half that, which a bowl is a good compromise, and even then the bowl is usually too much. And by the way, the burrito's too much for most men too. I'd say 70% is about right, and then about 50% is about right for women. I eat the whole thing because I need to eat twice as many calories as most people, so it's fine. And if you want to eat the whole thing every once in a while, that's fine too. If you combine 2 meals into one because of some reason, do that once in a while. It's okay. I'm not saying never do this, but I'm saying in general, what's the habit? The habit should be, I paid my $8 for my burrito. The purpose was to have lunch. The purpose was not to get full. The purpose was not an entertaining experience. Just change the perspective. It's not recreational. Have your fill. It's okay to throw the food away. Or eat it later, but it's okay to throw it away. Is it more responsible for you? Because we always feel like we got to get our money's worth, right? I spent $8 on this burrito. I'm eating the whole thing. This is expensive food, right? Okay. You know what's more expensive? Heart failure, obesity, okay? You got what you needed. They overserved you. It's okay. I have gotten accustomed, even at my size, to throwing food away at restaurants. I do it all the time, right? I'm like, oh, I had the experience. This was nice. Done. And then that's over. Wyland?
You are aware that throwing food away is one of the 7 deadly Dutch sins.
It's tough audience, huh?
Here's an idea. In a restaurant, a lot of restaurants serve you way too much food.
Yeah.
But what about going to the restaurant with the idea that I'm going to eat half of what they serve me and ask for a box for the other?
Yeah.
Take it home, put it in the fridge, and
Yeah.
throw it away.
Yep.
That's very economic. You get 2 meals.
It is. I just want to, and I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying I just want to be careful, depending on what you ate. If you got a bunch of fried things, it's one thing to have 1 meal of fried things. It's another thing to have 2 meals of fried things that day. So I just want to urge some caution there. That's all. I would much rather see you throw away fried chicken and French fries or onion rings, which taste amazing, by the way, and I'm not saying don't eat them, because they taste great, and having them once in a while, I don't believe will harm you. But I just want to urge a little, just think about it, okay? You'll be fine. Yeah.
Another idea, I've heard some people will take not a regular dinner plate, but a small plate.
Yeah.
And what they can fit on that plate, they eat. Once
Yeah.
they're into that habit, and they always use that size plate,
Yeah.
it becomes really easy.
And use a smaller bowl. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've heard of that too. It's a great idea. It is. And along those lines too, usually have a little heftier meat to carb ratio. You do those 2 things, you're going to get more protein, you're going to be more satiated, and healthier. So yeah, it's a great idea. Smaller bowls, smaller plates, that kind of thing. If you want to go swap out all the plates in your cabinets, if that's what it takes, and that's because we do like to look down at a bowl that's full. It feels nifty. I don't know why, but humans just love looking at abundance. And so we look at a plate and it's full, we're like, yeah. And if the plate's smaller, we're still okay with that for some reason. Because we don't deal in absolutes. We deal in proportions, don't we? Don't associate food with reward. Again, that's for Thanksgiving, that's for Christmas, that's for occasional family gatherings. And if you're like me, who lives in an area where I have a bunch of local family, there's a birthday or more than one birthday most months. So we're getting together on Friday nights for all these birthdays. I am known as the person, so is Emily, that just skips a lot of the cake and ice cream. I can still celebrate, but I don't have to partake in all of the food. You know, it's up to you, but is your life going to be so much more improved because you had that birthday cake that night? Does it do anything for you? It's a momentary pleasure. I get that it's nice. But you're going to look back and be like, oh, I'm so glad I had that cake. You know, that boxed cake that was at that thing. Yay. Right? Try to think of it as fuel. Once in a while, it's a reward. It is. It's totally a reward. God made us enjoy food for a reason. It's a pleasure. We have the joy of, it's a grace. It's nice. Like, God didn't make the dopamine release we get from taking a bite of food for no reason. It's a nice thing. It's a gift. But pursuing it recreationally all the time, that becomes more like slavery. You get a dopamine hit from a small portion or a big portion. It's about the same. You get that reward sensation, big plate, small plate. Go ahead.
Did they make this dopamine in a pill?
Yeah, it's also known as like heroin, methamphetamine. I think cocaine does it too. Yeah, a lot of people, you can find it in Bellingham. I'm sure a lot of people love it. It's really popular right now. That does bring up another thing. So a lot of this stuff, by the way, that I'm talking about is raising your dopamine levels. Adults, as we age, tend to have less dopamine because of the behavior. Now, part of it's because you also lose sensitivity to your environment. You don't respond the same way. Children are dopamine junkies. They just run around like hopped up on pursuing dopamine and novelty. Those two things, they just run around and they're just like, when's the next hit? Let's go. Like, they're like junkies. Adults could use a little bit more of that because the dopamine signaling is very positive. Now, we don't have time to go into some of the like hormone cascades, but just know that like the pursuit of dopamine, if done in a wholesome manner, Wyland, stay away from drugs, is actually very beneficial. Dopamine is produced from other precursor hormones, which, if not converted to dopamine, get converted to hormones that are associated with stress, such as serotonin, and then downstream, which is upstream of, what's the classical? Cortisol. If you produce a bunch of dopamine, one, it skews the ratio of dopamine to cortisol, right? Because you have higher dopamine. You can also make it harder to make cortisol because they both come from some of the same precursors. Well, that's neat, right? So if you have more stress in your life, try to pursue more dopamine. All these things are dopamine pursuing, ultimately, in a roundabout way, including, by the way, working out. It might, and I get it, like sometimes you just don't want to go train. Go train anyway. The dopamine you will get off of that, the reward sensation, is very significant. I don't think I've ever walked away from a training session, except for a couple times that I've been injured. It's been like, I wish I hadn't done that. Yeah, like that was just a waste. You know what? I should have skipped today. I have had plenty where I'm going in and been like, I don't feel like it today. I just don't. I don't want to. I don't want this. I don't want this. I want to go lie down or do whatever. Maybe eat a bowl of ice cream. But I've never come away and been like, boy, I sure regret training today. Go ahead, Wyland.
What is cortisol?
Cortisol is the stress hormone.
What do you need it for?
Actually, you do need it. So cortisol, it's a signaling hormone. Cortisol does a lot of stuff. So, and I'm not pretending to be like the expert on it, but there's actually a couple diseases where you have cortisol deficiency, and those people don't do well, because cortisol is actually an adaptive stress hormone, meaning that it helps promote adaptation to your environment where it's needed. People that have low cortisol, they lack bone mineral density. Their skin doesn't regrow when they get wounds. It doesn't heal. They can't put on muscle mass, basically. If they get like tendinitis, it'll last for like days or weeks or years, because it is needed in the right amount. So I'm not saying, you don't want to purge your body of cortisol, but I promise you can't. Unless you have a disease. It's needed, but high elevations of it. Do you ever go through a stressful event, stressful time in life, and it's just like, I can't escape this. Like, even though you feel like it should be fine, you're just tense, and it's just like this thing is looming, whatever it is. That's probably chemical signaling. It's the influence of cortisol. You can counteract that with dopamine pursuit to some degree.
Endorphins, or how do you pronounce that? What is that?
What do you mean?
Endorphins?
Endorphins?
Endorphins,
Yeah, endorphins, that's a different class of signaling hormone, often associated with similar reward sensations it'd be similar to dopamine in their effect. Endorphins are a weaker signaling hormone in general, though. The big players really are dopamine and cortisol, stress, and reward would be the way that you'd want to talk about dopamine. And the other thing, too, is those last points under 5. Don't let a slip-up distract you from the bigger picture. Realize it takes time to build habits, and realize it takes time to repair damage. Do not expect years of, bad habits, yes, but we do, if you're a typical American, these habits form themselves organically to not eat in an optimal manner, to not train, right? It's like you pursued bad things, but you might have found yourself in a place where you have habits that are counter to your health. It might take a while to change that. When I started taking my health seriously in 2016, I started training. I did great there. I was still staying up later than I should have. And I ate more protein, but still ate a diet that wasn't that great. I upped my protein. And I still ate things that were probably not the best. I wasn't being totally dumb. I wasn't drinking 2 liters of soda or anything like that, but it took me years to figure some of this stuff out and to implement them in my life. Have some degree of patience, and don't let I've seen it with people. I've had it with clients. They'll have a bad weekend where they, sometimes I'll tell them hey, this is going on this weekend. You've done so well. Just, have a nice weekend on this vacation, right? It's okay. But in day-to-day life, for no reason, you go in some binge or something like that, and they're like, it's over. It's not over. You had a bad weekend. It's in the past now. Move on. It sucks. I get that. And it might be discouraging, and you probably disappointed yourself. Disappointed me too. It's okay. I'm over it. Are you? Just move on. I'm not going to say the cringy term of forgive yourself. You don't need to forgive yourself. You just need to get over yourself. Okay? Tough it out. Move on. Do the next thing. All right? Morning outdoors exposure. This is equally important winter and summer. In fact, I could see the argument of saying it's actually more important in winter here. You either need to have, there's a few things. One, you want to have that exposure to radiation in the morning. Whether the sun is behind clouds or not, you're still getting that exposure to radiation. Just for a minute, it's fine. That's telling your body it is time to get up. You should not be wearing contact lenses, glasses of any kind, sunglasses or anything. Even contact lenses, a lot of them block UV, which, by the way, if you wear contact lenses, I don't actually know if this is an option because I'm not into contact lenses. You might see if you can get some that are not UV blocking, because you're walking around basically blinding your eyes to whether or not it's daytime signaling. Not optimal, and also red light signaling, and infrared specifically, which if you sit in front of computer screens a lot or have a smartphone and use that a lot, which is probably all of us, that blue light degrades your eyes. The red light is used, and an infrared is actually associated with restoration of your eyes. Blue light goes right through your glasses. Red and infrared actually can sometimes be filtered out a little bit. Just keep it in mind. The other thing about the morning exposure, that cold in the winter is beneficial. Your skin gets cold. It helps your body know, hey, it's time. You know how you wake up when it's cold if you're drowsy? There's a whole bunch of chemical signaling happening there. It's uncomfortable, but it's good for you. I do recommend it like I mentioned a couple of months ago or whatever, every morning I get up, I sleep in my boxers, first I do is I go step outside just for 1 minute. I do it if it's cold, if it's hot, whatever. It's not hot yet. It'll be kind of nice. I did it when it was 5 degrees that one weekend in January. It was snowing and blowing. It was not my favorite, but only had to be not my favorite for 1 minute. And then I could go inside and whatever. But that signaling is important. It's also important to get some of the processes going in the body, including the generation of nitric oxide, which is associated with better blood flow to the entire body, including your brain, and also reducing. It's the main signal that your body actually uses to reduce blood pressure too. Sometimes just implementing a couple of these things, people are able to get off blood pressure medication just by fixing the circadian rhythm stuff, a little bit of diet change, that kind of thing. Red light therapy. This is something I recommend to everyone in this room because you live in Washington. Okay? It's very important. Go spend the $50 on Amazon. Get a red. If you want to help finding one, I'll send you a link to the one I bought. I spent $50 on it. Okay? They're cheap. They last for years. It has a timer on it. I have it on for half an hour. I have a desk that converts from sitting to standing. There's a wall right behind me. I hung it on the wall. I take my shirt off. Again, not in video calls. And I do my work. And it shines on my back. 30 minutes later, when it clicks off, I'm good. I have noticed a difference. Because that is helping you with daytime signaling. That is helping you promote blood flow around your body. That's also helping you with nitric oxide production. The light, those are the nanometer measurements for the infrared and red. I'd say you want at least 50 watts. Ideally, the one I use, actually, honestly, is 35 watts. When do you use it? Preferably in the morning. But it's actually fine to use it at night. Our bodies are accustomed to receiving dominantly red light and infrared in the morning and evening. It's actually beneficial even to do it right before bed. If that's what works out well for you, great. Or both. UV light, around 400 nanometers, at least 25 watts. I have one that's just a bulb. It's an LED bulb. I screw it in. I do it at the same time as the red light, which you can do, or you can do it at separate times. It doesn't matter. I don't recommend you use the UV light at night because that's daytime signaling. So don't do it after dinner. That's if you missed it, you missed it. That day's gone. Go on to the next day. That one is above me and just shines down. It doesn't have to be in your face. In fact, I don't recommend it be in your face because that would be very uncomfortable. It might be damaging. I don't know. But what I do recommend is that it be shining on your body. I actually noticed this last winter was the winter that I was the most consistent with using it, and I actually didn't get as pasty this winter. It actually does produce some melanin signaling, which is actually very helpful. Melanin is broken down into dopamine also in the body. So you lack the ability sometimes to create some of the dopamine signaling and other signaling that's needed without melanin. Summer considerations coming up right now. Get your sunlight exposure without glasses on. Okay? The reason why is kind of what we just talked about. Your ability to adapt to sunlight is very blunted if your eyes do not also see the sunlight. The adaptation to sunlight, the melanin production and things like that, starts in the brain. Everything else is downstream of that. Now, obviously, there's plenty of local signaling too, because if you wear a shirt, you'll get a farmer's tan when you're outside. However, those places that are exposed, there's preparatory actions that occur. There's sort of cascades that begin. They start in the nervous system in the brain. And even driving around with your window cracked is a great way to just get some of that daytime signaling. Or down all the way. But cracked is good too. But I'd recommend just don't wear sunglasses unless you need to. There's times that you're around things that could damage your eyes. I'm not saying it when you're in the snow, don't wear sunglasses. If you're in the snow, wear sunglasses. That's not a reality for many of us much of the year. In fact, it wasn't a reality at all for me this year. I don't remember ever being around snow and sunlight at the same time this last year. But yeah, I'll grant you that. If you are in that situation, then yeah, go and wear your sunglasses. But day to day, if you're fishing, because you get the reflection from the water, there's reason to wear sunglasses sometimes. But while you're driving to fishing, don't wear them, right? Just try to get as much sunlight exposure as possible without glasses. You'll actually notice, if you observe, that your skin will actually tan faster, much faster. The other thing is, so that infrared and red signaling, right? So just to reiterate, so morning and evening, right? Sunlight is predominantly red and infrared. The middle of the day, there's a lot more blue and UV. All right? If you were to take a person, a theoretical person, and have them begin sunlight exposure, at 9 a.m., and have them be exposed to sunlight for an hour. And then that same person at 1 p.m. be exposed to sunlight at 1 p.m. And they're not adapted to sunlight, they're still pretty pasty, like Washingtonians. The guy that got exposed at 1 p.m. is probably going to get burned. The 9 a.m. guy is probably not going to get burned, or at least he's less likely to. Now, that'll grant you that's partly because the sun's just less intense, right? It's traveling through more atmosphere. A significant portion of that, however, is how much red light they're getting and infrared. That is creating more nitric oxide under the skin, which is associated with increased blood flow, which is associated with increased cooling. A sunburn is a burn. It's a burn because the skin surface gets too hot. As blood flow increases, you get that reddening of the skin. You get that reddening and it's not a burn. It's like, oh, it's red, but it's not a burn yet. That's nitric oxide. That's actually really good that it's happening, and you should seek that. Pre-burn. No, not all the way to a burn. We don't want to get burned. But that's literally all that's happening is your body's just cooling itself. The nitric oxide then enters general circulation of the body, reduces blood pressure, those types of things. So just be aware of that factor as you expose yourself to the sun. If you're only exposing yourself to the sun because of, your whatever your daily, schedule looks like, if it's in the middle of the day, you're probably going to need to do it in smaller doses. Carbs increase insulin sensitivity. What does that have to do with it? Anybody have any ideas? This is actually something I just learned about like a few months ago. This is more true of northern climates, which is us, right? We don't live near the equator. In the winter, actually by design, some of your metabolism changes. Now, calories in, calories out still holds pretty darn true, but there are certain things that do skew it a little bit by a few percentage points. This is one of them. Your insulin sensitivity under the signaling of sunlight and longer days does increase, which makes it actually easier to lose weight. It also makes you more sensitive to leptin, which is the satiation hormone. So ghrelin is the hunger hormone. Leptin is the satiation hormone. It's the I don't care about food, we're done here hormone. You sensitize to it under sun exposure. If you're having trouble losing weight, summertime and sunlight exposure are great ways. Have you ever had a day that this is probably something you guys are all going to resonate with. If you ever have a day that you go do a bunch of yard work outside in the summer and you're outside more than usual, you notice that you just don't care that much about food that day. Like you want lunch, but like a small portion, you're like, yeah, I'm good. Now that night you might be ravenous, right? Because you performed work, but under the influence of the sun, you peck at food, you're like, I don't need much. Anybody have that experience? That's because of this. So if you want to make it easier to eat less, get out in the sunlight. In the winter, the opposite is true. There's actual biological reasons why it's easier to gain weight in the winter. This is yet another one. It's not just because the holidays are around. Your body actually does bias a little bit more toward fat burning, and insulin sensitivity does reduce because of that lack of sunlight, which means that it's easier to stay hungry more, and it's easier for you to gain weight gain fat specifically. So if you have things under control and you're at a decent weight, I would submit to you that it's probably perfectly acceptable to gain a few pounds in the winter and lose a few pounds in the summer, if you follow all of these things generally, that's actually going to just happen without trying. If you eat the same calories, pretty much, within some degree of, inaccuracy, year-round, follow the right habits, you're still going to gain a few pounds in the winter. And it's going to fall off late spring through summertime. That's normal, fine, and good. That's not a bad thing. That's just the way our biology is. You can fight it if you want. That's fine too. But it is something that you can accept. And again, I'll say, this does mean it's easier to lose weight in the summer. And since you should be periodizing because you shouldn't plan on okay, over 3 years I need to lose however much weight, or a year or 2 years. You can't be hard dieting for a whole year at a time, because your body, it just gets really difficult for your body. You want to go through these phases. We talked about periodization, gaining and losing weight's the same way. You want to periodize your efforts, plan to lose weight for 12 to 16 weeks, then back off and have maintenance for 8 weeks, something like that. Let your body sort of reset at that point, sensitized to a diet phase again. Summer is a perfect time to do that because your insulin sensitivity is maximized. You can get outside, you can get moving, burn more calories, and get around the sun, which will make you feel less hungry because you're getting that sunlight. I am finding it's very hard to gain weight in the summer. I have found that always. And for some reason, things in my life with my training and athletic pursuits, I've always ended up in the position of gaining weight in the summer. And it's really annoying because I'm hot and I'm less hungry. I don't recommend it, but that's just how it goes for me. I even set myself up this last winter. I totally changed my periodization last year so that I could gain weight in the winter. I was like, all right, cool, we're all good to go. And I blew the hernia. And so I kind of had to lose a little bit of weight because I would have got fluffy eating the calories I was eating. So I had to lose weight, and now I'm having to gain weight again in the summer. Yet again. Great. But that's just the way it worked, and I'm stuffing myself till I'm sick. Go ahead, Wyland.
What if you moved to Arizona from November through April and hike in the desert a lot?
That would probably be very beneficial for your health. But if you are outside a lot here, it's probably not that much different.
Kind of hard to hike out in the rain.
I've done it.
It's not much fun.
Life's not fun, Wyland.
More fun in Arizona.
I'm not going to argue with you there. I don't like it to be rainy all the time either. But I go on walks in the rain, and it doesn't rain that hard here most of the time anyway. Go get a poncho, get some boots. If you're in Arizona, great. If you find yourself here in the winter, though, you have to tough it out a little bit. That's all I'm saying.
Good to know. Next time it rains, I'll give you a call. Go hiking in the rain.
Go ahead, try it. I'll probably be on my treadmill in my barn, which is cold in there because it's not heated. But because I'll walk on my treadmill with my shirt off, and it's like 55 degrees in there. So there's ways to do it. You got a big barn. Your barn's bigger than mine. Put a treadmill in there. Problem solved. Wow, I actually covered 10 too. We got 10 minutes left. Questions? Especially anything that's specific to you, your lifestyle, anything like that. Go ahead.
Random question I was thinking about, are there any particular cuisines that are better for certain times?
That's a great question. Actually, yeah. The answer is yes, especially in our kind of climate. I gave you the numbers for, what macros you should be eating. You can skew a little less fats and a little more carbs in the summer, and a little more fats and a little less carbs in the winter. However that looks for you specifically, I don't think it matters. If you want to switch out more of your meat sources to being higher fat content in the winter while reducing carb consumption a little bit, That's actually probably beneficial. It may even possibly result in less weight gain over the winter if you seek that. Possibly. So there is merit in that, for sure. And as far as fats go, just to reiterate, fats aren't bad. It's just, what's the context, everything else, right? But you'll never hear me advocating for these high-fat diets either. That's metabolic suicide. All of the fats are fine as long as they're not rancid, like most restaurant fryers, because they let their fat sit at 300 degrees for 5 days and then they swap it out. That's the problem. If you ate fried food at a restaurant that used a good quality, oil or fat, like beef, tallow, or something like that, and they changed it every day, it would be far less bad for you. But the reality is it's probably canola oil and it's probably 5 days old. And it's got bits of fried junk from 5 days before floating around in there that's also burned and basically turned into a crisp. So a mix of saturated fats, unsaturated fats, all of it's actually beneficial in the right portions. Even like olive oil has been shown to be anti-inflammatory and have a bunch of health benefits. Most of what you see at the store is not actually olive oil, though. It's sunflower oil, seed oil. To get real olive oil, generally it's going to be something that comes in a glass bottle. These are generalizations, by the way. Go look up the brand, though. See how reputable they are. But a lot of like the big plastic bottles, it's actually sunflower seed oil that's been flavored. It's a whole racket, and they don't have to report it. Well, they do have to, but they just lie because no one's checking. But if you sent a lot of it to a lab, you can read about this. It's been done. They sent it to labs for analysis, and it's not actually olive oil. Avocado oil has other similar anti-inflammatory properties. And it's great for cooking with, by the way, because it doesn't burn very easily, and it's pretty much flavor neutral. Although olive oil seems to be king as far as anti-inflammatory oils. Saturated fats like beef fats and things like that are actually pro-inflammatory. I don't view this as necessarily a bad thing, but that's probably why you shouldn't have all of your fats just from red meat sources, which is why I recommend get them at night. And fish oil too. I do recommend you eat fish. A couple times a week is probably enough, and eggs for the omega-3s. If you have eggs, especially now, this is an area where farm fresh or organic eggs do matter. Most of the eggs you see at the store that are cheap, the omega-3 presence is very reduced. There's a lot less. It's going to be more omega-6s. And omega-6s are fine, just things need to be in the right proportions. So I do recommend get eggs that are pasture-raised, organic. Buy them from there's a bunch of farmers around here that make eggs. Or get chickens. Like, they're not that big of a pain in the butt. They're a little bit of a pain. We have chickens and ducks. They're kind of a pain. Ducks, honestly, I think they're way cooler. So, they're also happier. They just walk around and they're like happy all the time. Chickens are like grumpy and they peck at you and other things and they're like, yeah, whatever, and they're grumpy. Like ducks, like every day is a good day for a duck. It's just like every day is a good day to be a duck. They're just happy. You give them now they're messier, you give them water to frolic in and stuff like that, but they are just happier. They're more pleasant to be around. They make happier sounds. I think, and their eggs, by the way, have a lot of omega-3s in them. And one duck egg is probably about equivalent to 1.5 chicken eggs as far as size goes. So if you're used to eating 3 chicken eggs, 2 duck eggs will be a similar amount of food. But they have a lot more of certain minerals in them, actually, a lot of really heavy in omega-3s, especially if they have quality food sourcing, right? If you're buying decent feed or letting them eat in the lawn even, bugs and all that stuff, they thrive on it. I do recommend, if you can, go buy from someone local that's raising them, not in a cage, not with a bunch of junk feed. The environment that the bird comes from will strongly influence the quality of what they're producing. It is a real thing. Just like a human. You put yourself in a crummy environment, how healthy are you going to be? you're not going to be healthy. How do you expect a bird that's in a poor environment to produce a product that's of any decent quality? And you're putting that in your body. So you recommend spend a few extra bucks, get better eggs. But eggs and fish, your omega-3s will go up, strongly associated with helping with cardiovascular disease, more positive outcomes, that kind of thing. Basically, the inflammation of your arteries, blood vessels, will go down with higher omega-3s. Omega-6s are what's in like saturated meats and stuff like that. Again, not bad for you, but we want ratios. When I have people do blood work, I don't just check their omega-3. I have the test done that's omega-6 and omega-3 and gives me a ratio. I think around 6 is what we're looking for. And I actually just had a client, we checked hers, and they don't eat fish. I was like, oh, okay, I guess your omega-3s are going to be kind of skewed. But I also knew that they buy from someone at church, they buy farm fresh eggs that are like, those chickens just get to run wild. Her omega-3 to omega-6 ratio is maybe the best I've ever seen. So, and she doesn't eat that much. She's a small woman, and I'm trying to get her to eat more, actually. So, like, just a couple eggs a day, and she had a phenomenal omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. It was perfect. And I was like, well, sweet. Keep doing what you're doing. I have no recommendations for changing. In fact, I would recommend you not deviate, because your numbers look excellent.
Have you ever used the omega swirls from Barney's?
No. I don't know what that is.
All the time. You can take like a tablespoon of it, and they have different ones with
Oh.
different. And they actually taste fairly good.
Oh, do they?
They have like
Okay.
the lemon one and the orange.
Lemon one's great.
Yeah, the lemon one's really good.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, because usually omega-3s, it's fish. It smells like, it smells like a fishing boat.
All different sorts of mixes.
Okay.
On their website they have them.
Omega swirls?
They're omega swirls.
I've never heard of this. I'll have to look it up now.
Yeah, they would take them as a kid. It's
Okay.
it's like-
It tastes like fish.
Yeah, because I was like, here, take a spoonful, and they were like, no, and then they tasted it, and they're like,
Okay, I've never heard of that. I'll have to look that up. That's actually cool.
yeah,
So there you
I
go.
used to carry the lemon one.
Okay.
sometimes, But yeah, at actual Barley's they carry it.
Okay. Well, it's good to know. That's another thing to try, I suppose. Yeah, and be careful of a lot of omega-3 supplements. Most of them are just rancid, and they're actually counterproductive. The omega-3s, the chain's broken down inside. A good test is like buy the gel capsule, bring it home, cut it open, and smell it. If it smells like fish, good. That's fine. It's going to smell fishy. It's in a capsule, so you don't have to drink it because it probably doesn't taste the best. If it smells like something your dog would appreciate and you wouldn't, then it's probably counterproductive. If it smells at all like bad fish or something that's been sitting too long, which most of them do, this is counterproductive to you. Don't put it in your body. You're better off not putting it in your body. It's actually doing more harm than good. Anything else? Questions, points? Wyland?
Should you raise pigs?
Yeah, pigs are great. Pigs, the health of the pig and the quality of the meat is totally dependent on what you feed it and the environment you put it in. If you put it in a tiny pen and it's always walking around in its own poop, and you're giving it like whatever junk feed, cheapest feed you can possibly find, the quality of the meat will suffer. If you give it a larger pen and you keep that pen clean and it has access to clean water, and you're giving it a diverse set of like hay and grains and table scraps, and maybe if you're someone that raises chickens and once in a while one of them dies, you throw a chicken over the, like that kind of thing, the quality of the meat will be much higher. Pigs very much take on what they eat, like to an extreme. They don't purge certain toxins, it seems like, and other things. I've talked to, actually, Aaron Holder used to raise pigs. He said that he got, because it's always about finding feed for them, right? To get them to, because they grow as fast as you can feed them practically, some breeds. So for a while, he was getting scraps from a pizza place. And they would just give him buckets, and it'd be buckets of like sauce and meat. Cool. He said, when you cooked any of that meat from those pigs, no matter what, it always smelled a little bit like Italian food. Always. He said even when he was slaughtering them, you could smell the spices. Yeah. I don't think any other animal does that. So pigs are great, but how they were raised and what they ate makes a big difference, especially pigs. And pork tenderloin, by the way, is one of the best cuts of meat. It is very lean. It's very low fat, so you can eat it during the day. Very high protein. Tastes really good. Easy to chew. Super easy to prepare. You can just take a pork tenderloin. You can throw it in the oven with a dry rub. And it'll turn out amazing. You just make slices, like 1/2-inch slices with a knife. Serve that with potatoes. That's a great dinner or lunch. You can cut it up finer and put that in a sandwich. A cold sandwich, let it cool off, throw it in the fridge, cold sandwiches. Pork tenderloin is it's like top, and it's also cheap because a lot of people don't seem to care about buying it or know about it. It's like, I'm a big fan. I eat how much pork tenderloin do we eat? On a weekly basis, there's at least some. Because it's low cost, high protein, low fat, tastes great, easy to chew, easy to eat. You can dress it up however you want. You can do barbecue sauce, you can do all sorts of spices, whatever you want. It takes on the flavor of whatever you do with it. Smoked is amazing, by the way. You just smoke the whole thing, throw it in the smoker with a dry rub. It's perfect. Just perfect.
Melt in your mouth.
Oh yeah, it's easy you hardly have to chew it, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once you cut it, you just eat with a fork.
Yeah, you don't use a knife. Yeah, you don't need to use a knife when you make it right. If you overcook it, yeah. But as long as you don't overcook it, I don't use a knife when we just cut rounds of it. I just take my fork and cut it and eat it. And you hardly have to chew it. Okay, one more thing. If anyone wants, then I'll have to close it out because we're out of time. Okay, cool. Well, thank you all for sticking it out. This is our last one. If you guys have questions, let me know anytime. I'm available. I did record all of these as well. I'll be posting them on my podcast. So if anyone wants to go back and listen or send them to friends and be like, hey, I listened to this thing and it was helpful, feel free to share it. I'll be posting them on Facebook and that kind of thing if anyone wants to go back and find it useful. Or if you missed a week, right? That kind of thing. So let's pray and then we'll get going. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the final installment of our series here. I thank you for everyone who's attended. I pray that it's been beneficial and useful. I pray now for Jason as he leads us in worship in a moment, and the worship team. I also pray for Dave as he preaches. I pray that you'd bless their preparation, and I pray that the service now would glorify you. In your name, amen.